Hello and welcome aboard to the 44th installment of Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards. J.C. Kane is producing. Your number, 877-217-5757. This is, of course, a special program. The governor was reelected Saturday night. He was forced into a runoff by his opponent, Eddie Rispone, but after the votes were counted Saturday, Governor John Bel Edwards received more than 774,000 votes from his fellow residents, citizens of Louisiana, the most votes for a governor in Louisiana in 20 years. And, Governor, I'm sure you're quite heartened by the outcome. Congratulations.
I am. I didn't know that last fact until you just said it, but that makes me feel even better. No, thank you, Jim, and it's good to be back with you and all the listeners. And certainly I am gratified that the voters of Louisiana collectively decided on Saturday to continue to give me the opportunity to serve as governor. And I can assure you we're going to work extremely hard all the way through this second term to make sure that our state is even stronger and better than it is today. And I'm very proud to report it's stronger and better than it was 4 years ago. So we're excited about the opportunities we have to serve. And I'll tell you, Don and I feel very, very fortunate and blessed to be given the opportunity to serve as governor and first lady. And so we're just chomping at the bit to keep going.
It was a bruising campaign. Are there any scars?
No, I have a pretty thick skin, but that may be easy for me to say because I was busy working literally 16, 18 hours a day, never home to watch TV. I didn't see most of what was out there, and I think I was fortunate for that. It's really the families that really take it more personally, and it's just harder on family members than it is on candidates. I think that's the case almost all the time, but it certainly was the case in my family. But winning has a great healing property to it.
Well, the statement that probably will go with you to wherever you go, as long as you're on this earth and beyond, is bless his heart.
Well, yeah, I mean that was what came to mind at the moment. And, of course, I did have the opportunity on Monday to speak with the president. He called. It was sort of one of those surreal experiences. Don and I had lunch on Monday and decided we were going to go spend a couple of days in our home. And I was actually driving my old truck. Donna was sitting there, and we got a call from the White House. But we had a very nice conversation. It was brief. But he congratulated me on the win and told me that I had done something he didn't think was possible, and that indicated to him that I was a great campaigner and a good governor, and that he wanted to resume our working relationship. And I assured him that was my desire as well. And in fact, I had said throughout the campaign that as soon as the election was over, I anticipated being reelected and that it would be time to govern again, and the president and I would resume a good working relationship, much like I've had with him over the previous 3 years and with President Obama before that. So I assured the president that that was my intention as well. I thanked him for the call, and of course he said that he watched a little bit of the speech from the other night, and that I had a beautiful family up on the stage with me. So I told him I appreciated that as well.
Is he a different person when you talk with him as you did when he called to congratulate you, as opposed to the person who attacked you so vigorously at these rallies?
Well, he always has been. So I've had a number of personal meetings with him face-to-face and on the phone, and he is always very different one-on-one and in small settings, and the cameras are off, than he is when they're on. Obviously, he's the same person, but it's just a much different experience when you have that one-on-one conversation with him, as opposed to when he's speaking out in public and maybe on TV and so forth.
877-217-5757. Douglas in Henderson, you are first up. Douglas, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You were on the air.
Hello. Yes. I don't know. Maybe it's my background, but okay. Well, Governor Edwards, I just had a quick question. Is there anything possible that can be?
All right. Hold on, Douglas. We're getting a little bit of feedback. You got it? Okay. Douglas, go ahead. You're back
Hello.
on. Yes, sir. You're back on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jim. Hello, Governor Edwards. Just quick, brief question. Is there anything possible that you think your administration can do to try to bring the cost of the flood insurance down somewhat or somehow? I just got blindsided by, got a notification from the mortgage company that I had to get flood insurance, and then got a low quote, so I took the insurance policy. If I 2 or 3 months into the policy, I got a letter informing me that, it's not 700, it's 1900.
Douglas, thank you very much for the call. Before you get off the phone, I'm going to ask you to give your number and name to Jace. He'll be taking that from you, and I'll put some people to work on it. I can't promise you that I can get your premium lowered. The National Flood Insurance Program is a creature of Congress in Washington, D.C., and there have been a lot of changes to the program in recent years, and I know that they did some things recently in the last few years to try to make that insurance more affordable than it otherwise would have been. And I don't know whether your policy premium was properly calculated based on the risk of flooding in your particular area or not. This has to do with flood maps, and they get updated on occasion, and sometimes, and I think by law, the premium has to reflect the risk that is in turn reflected in the flood maps. And so sometimes I know that it happens that homes are improperly designated as being in one zone when they're actually in another. So that may have happened to you, and I just don't know. But you give us the information. I'll put some folks to work on it to see whether there's something that we can do for you on that. But I thank you very much for your call, Douglas.
Big week for the governor and his family. His wife Donna was at his side Saturday night at the Renaissance in Baton Rouge. And you were at the Monteleone 4 years ago, and both cities were very good to you in this election. In East Baton Rouge Parish, the governor won by more than 50,000 votes, and in Orleans Parish, he won by more than 100,000. And in what was once a Republican stronghold, Jefferson, Governor John Bel Edwards won by 18,000 votes. So the big cities were very good to you, and I remarked that it was somewhat of an irony because you're the country boy.
Yeah.
Eddie Risponi was the city slicker, and he did better in rural areas, and you did exceedingly well in the cities.
Yeah, and that's true. And in fact, I was sort of reminded of that when I was driving home to North Tangipahoa Parish. But I did really, really well in North Tangipahoa Parish, where I'm from. I won the parish overall, and the further north you got in the parish, the more rural it is, and the better that I did. But no, that's right. And look, there's a lot of every election cycle brings something a little bit different, but you can sort of see some trend lines if you put them together. But at the end of the day, we were able to put together a campaign plan strategy that we never deviated from, and it turned out to have been successful. And it's like anything else, whether you're a football coach or a politician. If you win, you're brilliant. Even if you win by one vote. If you lose by one vote, you're
horrible.
That's right. That's right.
You're horrible. It's what President Kennedy said, that defeat is an orphan and victory has 1,000 fathers.
Correct.
877-217-5757. James in Longview, Texas. Hello, James. You're on Ask the Governor.
Good afternoon, Governor.
Hi, James. Good to hear from you again.
Good to hear you, and congratulations to
Thank
you
you,
on your
sir.
big win. Anyhow, I almost wish I lived 67 miles east. I would have voted for you.
Well, thank you, James.
And all that. I mean, provided I be over the straight line, that is. I'm taking a guess from my many trips over there. Anyhow, my question was short and sweet. Anyhow, do you think, based on the election results, do you think the political landscape is changing for the better, and do you think it'll kind of help you gain momentum and make it easier for you to pass more things in the future? I'd just be interested in your input.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that any shifts in the landscape can be detected from Saturday night. I think it's a continuation of where we were 4 years ago. And what I think it means is there are enough voters in Louisiana who are comfortable with someone in the middle of the political spectrum, regardless of party, who they believe loves Louisiana and will do their dead level best to make it a better and stronger state, and will do what they can to serve the people rather than party, to be honest with you. And I think that's what happened 4 years ago. I think that approach was ratified again on this past Saturday night by the voters of Louisiana. I will hope that the working relationship that I have with the legislature will continue to be as productive as it has been most recently. And the good news is we don't have the same kind of fiscal challenge that we had when I became governor 4 years ago. That was the largest budget deficit in the history of our state. It was $2 billion. Even in a state as big as Texas, a $2 billion deficit would be big. But in a state like Louisiana, it was the largest ever. And there's just no easy way to tackle that, but it has to be tackled. And there are no easy decisions to make because, unlike the federal government, we have to deliver a balanced budget every year. And so you had to take office and you had to make cuts, you had to find savings, and had to work with the legislature to get revenue. Ultimately, we were able to do that, and we're much better off today. But we don't have that kind of immediate challenge right now. And so I hope that this will allow us to start off having a very productive general session in March, a 3-month regular session that'll start. It's a non-fiscal year. And that we can build on the progress that we've been able to make with this stability that we've had. And, for example, James, the first investment in higher ed in 10 years, the first pay raise in 10 years for teachers and so forth. So I'm excited about what we can do, and certainly I'm going to do everything I can to work with this legislature.
What was your take, Governor, in the legislative races? Republicans did well, and they now, I think, have 68 seats in the House and 27 in the Senate. Obviously big numbers, but you were able to work with them to some degree.
Yeah.
Is that going to be possible with perhaps an even more conservative legislature?
Yes. First of all, it's not so much the party of the individual; it's their willingness to work constructively and in good faith. And I look at the Senate and the House, and I believe there are plenty members, regardless of party, who are willing to do that. And again, we don't have that major fiscal crisis that we're dealing with right now. And so there's no reason why we can't get things started in a relatively harmonious and productive fashion. That's certainly my goal, and that's what I'm going to be working on. But the most new faces in the legislature since I was elected in 2007, when we took office in 2008 in the House, for example, there were like 60 brand new members. And so there are a lot this year, but it's not 60. So I've been here before, but it was while I was in the legislature. And we're working really hard now to reach out to these newly elected members so that we can start having conversations with them and so forth. But I'm actually optimistic. I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do over the next 4 years.
877-217-5757. Chris in Lake Charles. Hello, Chris. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor. My family's been rice farmers and soybean farmers for a good 135 years. We want to continue that. In light of the trade wars that are going on, are there any agricultural priorities that your administration will be facing, and what will y'all be doing with regards to the large agri-industry in Louisiana?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your call, and I appreciate the fact that your family's been in the same line of business for 135 years and that it's farming, and critically important for our state and for our country, really for the world. 60% of the nation's grains get exported down the Mississippi River. And so when we say that Louisiana feeds the world, when you look at that fact plus what our farmers produce, that get exported, it's correct. And the industry, farming, is over $11 billion a year, so it's critically important for us. You're right. So we have challenges, particularly because, as you know, farmers always have challenges. The weather is almost never perfect, right? It's going to be too dry, too wet, get too cold too fast, whatever. And then on top of that, right now, we have the trade instability that is affecting global markets for commodities, and especially grains. And I'm hopeful that the president is going to be able to bring this to a relatively speedy conclusion from this point and get the situation with China ironed out. We actually were singled out by both Bloomberg and CNBC as the state among all 50 that had the most to lose from a protracted trade war and trade instability because of the importance of the ports in Louisiana, which we have the largest port complex in the Western Hemisphere, both with respect to the grain exports we talked about earlier, but also the imports of things like aluminum and steel that are being tariffed. And also, aluminum and steel are in construction materials used extensively in chemical and petrochemical manufacturing facilities, and so that's adding to the cost of those facilities that are being constructed and sometimes can cause a delay in the final investment decision and so forth. So I've encouraged the president in a letter that I wrote to him, but also face-to-face, to please bring the negotiations to a successful conclusion as soon as possible so that this instability can be replaced by stability that will benefit all the farmers, not just in Louisiana, but around the country. And we all know that China has engaged in unfair trade practices and perhaps currency manipulation at times. And so there's a reason for what's happening. We just need for it to be concluded as soon as possible. It does appear they're much closer to the USMCA agreement with Congress. That'll be NAFTA 2.0, which should be helpful as well if they can get that done. And Chris, I'm going to continue to work with Commissioner Strain to do what I can as governor to help farmers across the state of Louisiana.
877-217-5757 is your number for Ask the Governor. Lynn in Ball. That's Ball, Louisiana. Good afternoon, Lynn.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi there. I have a question about sales tax. My husband and I opened a coffee shop in central Louisiana to try and keep our young people in that area. They leave in droves. Give them something to do, place to hang out. We're open all day. But it's very difficult for us. Part of the issue is that we can't charge enough for our coffee because of sales tax. No one wants to pay $6 for a cup of coffee that they could go make at home. And so we keep our prices as low as we possibly can. Our profit margins are very, very, very narrow. We are by no means rich in any way. I'd like to know if you have some plan to help us with the sales tax issue.
Well, then, thank you very much for calling, and I appreciate the fact that you all are investing there in central Louisiana. So the combined state and local tax rate with respect to sales taxes in Louisiana is one of the highest. It is the seventh lowest if you just look at the state portion of the sales tax. It's tied for seventh lowest among the states that actually have a sales tax. But when you add the local, it goes up to, I don't know, it's either 49 or 50. And that is a real issue. Overall, state and local taxes are low in Louisiana. We have the fifth lowest state and local combined tax burden in the country. When you factor in all of the taxes of the various types that are paid, and we're the third state in the nation earlier this year, I should say, to reach Tax Freedom Day. But you're talking specifically about the sales tax. I will tell you that there's 0.45 cents that is scheduled to come off in just a few years. I think it's 2024. That the tax burden will be reduced. That's a state portion of the sales tax. As for what's going on in Rapides Parish with sales tax, I cannot tell you if there's anything that is scheduled to be reduced from that.
Renee in Baton Rouge. Renee, good afternoon. You are on Ask the Governor.
Hey, Governor Edwards. This is Renee PT calling from Baton Rouge.
Yes, sir.
Kind of a two-part question. First off, is there any plans in this current administration to bolster education in Louisiana, similar to how we funded TOPS? And is there any kind of plans put in place to not only do that for LSU, but also for our schools around the state, so that way we may move toward a two-school flagship state, similar to how Alabama is with all?
Renee, thank you very much. So, second part first, we've got a master plan for higher education. It doesn't call for having two flagship universities, and I think you were referring to Alabama and Auburn. So that's not something that we're going to pursue. We have one institution in Louisiana, it's LSU, that is a land and sea and space grant institution. But with respect to bolstering education, the answer is yes, and I'll get back on that when we come back from this break.
Hello, this is Jim Inkster. You're listening to Ask the Governor on your local station. This show is airing statewide, and it is in its 44th edition with Governor John Bel Edwards at the helm, and he has won re-election. He will be in office, as we know now, January of 2024, based on his victory Saturday night with 774,000 votes over Eddie Rispone, a political newcomer who at the age of 70 got in the race for governor, spent much of his own money, and got 734,000 votes. How was your conversation with him on Saturday night?
Oh, it was good. He called over to concede shortly after, I guess, the first couple of news stations called the race. And he just started by indicating that it was clear that both he and I love the state of Louisiana and its people, and he wanted to be helpful going forward, so to make sure that Louisiana is as good and as strong as she possibly can be, and I thanked him for the call.
Well, you are the first Democrat to win re-election in 44 years, and there have only been 5 Louisiana governors to win consecutive terms, and Governor John Bel Edwards is in that number. 877-217-5757. I know a lot of people were watching Saturday and saw your mother-in-law. She was overcome by the heat, I believe, but is she doing all right?
She is. She's doing fine, and thank you for asking. And I really thank a lot of people who saw that, and they've been inquiring about her and expressing concern. But she's doing just fine. She was probably a little bit under the weather to begin with, and that ballroom was extremely hot. And up on the stage under the lights, it was even hotter, and I think that's what happened. As soon as she was taken out and put in the cool air outside, I think she was fine. But I appreciate the question, Jim.
Before we went to the break, Renee in Baton Rouge asked about education and TOPS in particular. How's higher ed going to fare with you and a new legislature?
Well, and I've said this before on this show, there were a number of reasons why I ran for governor initially 4 years ago, but chief among them was the fact that over the 8 years under my predecessor, the state of Louisiana cut support for higher education more than any other state in the nation and raised tuition more than any other state in the nation. It was very destabilizing because the tuition increases did not make up for the funding cuts, and they priced college out of reach for too many people. And so making sure that we stabilized the state of Louisiana and started investing again in higher education is probably the primary reason that I ran. We have been able to stabilize the state of Louisiana, and in the budget year for the current fiscal year, we actually made the first new investment in general fund dollars in higher education in a decade. So it is certainly my intention to continue that so that we can improve education in Louisiana, make sure we're creating more opportunity and prosperity. And when we improve the talent pipeline, we're going to get even more investments into our state that will create the jobs and the careers here that we need. We're also funding TOPS fully, and need-based aid for higher education, the GO Grants, is funded at the highest level ever currently. And finally, Jim, I'll say that the Board of Regents, under the leadership of Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, the commissioner, came up with a master plan for higher education that envisions the state of Louisiana by 2030 having 60% of its working-age adults with a post-secondary degree or credential. Right now, we're below 50% on that number. In fact, we're below 50% among white adults and about 20% among African-American adults. And that will transform our state. Moody's, the credit rating agency, took notice of that particular master plan for higher ed and commented on how transformative it will be when we get there. And, of course, 2030 sounds like a long way away. It's almost 2020 right now, so we've basically got 10 years to get this done.
Christine in Baton Rouge. Christine, good afternoon. You were on Ask the Governor.
Hello, Governor.
Hi, Christine.
I'm originally from Cameron Parish, and I'm kind of concerned that we had two of the biggest major hurricanes pass through there and nearly wiped a couple of towns off the map. But how is the state government going to keep helping down there?
Well, thank you very much, Christine. And I will tell you that we're working with all of our coastal parishes in order to implement the coastal restoration master plan. So we have a master plan that envisions $50 billion being invested over 50 years into projects all along the coast. We are doing that in Cameron Parish as well, as you just mentioned, to try to make sure that we are actually not going to continue to see the coastline recede, which is what's been happening recently. We've committed millions and millions of dollars, and I don't have the precise figure on the tip of my tongue, to a rock wall that's being built out in the Gulf to protect, for example, in the Rockefeller area. We're also doing other restoration projects, and we really have a great working relationship with the police jury and the government down in Cameron Parish, and that's something that Chip Klein, who heads up the CPRA, is working with them very, very closely. But Cameron is a beautiful parish. It's the largest in the state by area and the smallest in the state by population, unless you count the population of ducks. And of course, we're all looking for more ducks this year than there were last year. And now that the election is over, I can't wait to get down there and take in some hunting myself.
Let's go to Chandler in Mandeville. Good afternoon, Chandler. You are on, it is Charles in Mandeville. Charles, you're on Ask the Governor. Hello, Charles.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Governor, congratulations on a great election. I'm happy to see you back.
Thank you, Charles.
I have kind of a two-pronged question for you. One is, do you think there's any possibility of you advancing the raising of the minimum wage in our mainly Republican-run legislature? And the second part of my question is there any intention to move forward with the decriminalization of marijuana as part of criminal justice reform in our state?
The second part first, decriminalization of marijuana, the answer is no. I don't know of any serious effort to do that. There are a few legislators who I think are in support of that, but nowhere near the tipping point or the majority, and it's not something that I personally support. And I do appreciate the fact that you said decriminalization as opposed to legalization, because they're actually separate things, as you probably know, Charles. On the first, I do think it's possible to raise the minimum wage. And many of the states that have done this most recently are very conservative states. They're as conservative as Louisiana, at least. You can look at states like Arkansas, for example, where over the last 3 years or so, I think they've raised the minimum wage 3 times or more. Look, $7.25, and here we are almost in 2020. It's just not a meaningful minimum wage. Congress last adjusted it in 2009, so it's 10 years old. Congress is out of the business. They're leaving this up to the states now, and I would hope that the fact that I was reelected on a platform that included raising the minimum wage means something to the legislature, and I also hope that their constituents are telling them it's something that we need to do in a modest but meaningful way, and we can phase it in over time. But it is something that I'm absolutely committed to doing, and I think it can be done.
877-217-5757 is your Ask the Governor number. Let's go to O'Neill in Lafayette. Hi, O'Neill. You're on Ask the Governor.
5757 is your Ask.
All right. Please turn your radio down. There's a little bit of a delay, and I think you understand why. You're on the air, O'Neill. Take the floor.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, sir. You're on the air.
Okay, yes. I wanted to first congratulate the governor on his win last Saturday. But I just wanted to know, does he think that it's that the technological shutdown that the state is going through right now, if Mr. Rispone has something to do with that?
O'Neill, thank you very much for the call. And no, I do not. And in fact, what we're seeing with the attack that we experienced at about 4 o'clock on Monday morning. It is very, very similar to attacks that happened across 7 of our school districts late in the summer, just a week or so before school started. It's the same type of ransomware. It fits the same pattern, and certainly I don't think Mr. Risponi had anything to do with it. It is our hope and expectation that the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Office of Motor Vehicles, will be up and running tomorrow. And I will tell you, the problems we're experiencing right now are related to the fact that we detected the ransomware and we shut down computers and servers so that they could not be infected. And by doing that, we expect that this is going to be a 3 to 4 day event and not a 30 to 40 day event, which is what it would have been had the ransomware been successful in grabbing data and making it inaccessible. We don't believe we've lost any data. We're gradually turning computers and servers back on and restoring services now. We think we'll be up running with Office of Motor Vehicles tomorrow.
Hi, how are y'all?
Fine.
Doing fine, LaShondra. Thank you.
Hey, I've been rooting for you, John Bell, and I'm really ecstatic that you were reelected. I really just wanted to congratulate you, and I do know that I don't think you see color. I don't think, as far as, the state, I think you were the perfect person for the job. You're all about getting the job done, rather black, white, green, whatever. So my question is just that, how do you plan on helping out, the African Americans? I do know a lot of your votes, were from us. And just how do you plan on, helping us out this term?
Well, LaShondra, first of all, thank you very much for the call, and I appreciate your congratulations and so forth. And I've always said that I have been and will continue to be the governor for all of Louisiana, regardless of whether they're north, south, rural, urban, black, white, Hispanic, Republican, Democrat, Independent. And that's exactly the mindset that I have to continue. I also want to make sure that common sense and compassion play a role in policy development. And that's not going to change in my second term as well. And look, I hope we have an agenda. I believe we have an agenda that's going to create more opportunity and more prosperity for everyone, regardless of race. It is basically premised upon the belief that education is synonymous with opportunity. And so we're going to improve education, which I believe we've started down that road. The number one priority for second term will be early childhood education, so that more of our young children between age 0 and 3, many more of them are in high quality settings for early childhood educations, and they'll start school ready to learn. We're going to continue to invest in K through 12 education, both to get our teachers at least to the Southern regional average, but also the block grant funding portion of our schools, that make sure that we have the very best opportunity for them to get a great education. And then, as I talked previously about higher ed, now since you asked about African Americans, I will tell you that I'm someone who believes in HBCUs. We have 2 great public HBCUs in this state, Southern and Grambling, Southern being the only HBCU system in the country. We also have Dillard and Xavier, which are private institutions in Louisiana as well. And what I know, LaShondra, is that while only 3% of the nation's universities are HBCUs, 22% of the 4-year degrees conferred upon African Americans are conferred by HBCUs, 25% of all STEM degrees. And so if you want opportunity and prosperity for everybody, you have to support the HBCUs as well. We have done that principally at Southern and Grambling, because those are the public institutions, and we're going to continue to do that going forward. We're also going to make sure that we continue to have Medicaid expansion in place, which has been hugely positive for our state. It's helping African Americans and whites and Hispanics and others, equally. But it is something that's really important for working poor people, so that they have health insurance. And so these are things that we're going to continue working on, and I'm excited about the opportunity we have to make our state stronger and better for everyone.
Was there anything surprising about the outcome?
I was not surprised. I always believed I would win. I never saw a poll that said I was going to lose. And at the end of the day, the polling was right, not just in the fact that I would win, but it showed it would be a close race. And because I thought I would get 51, 52, and I got between those two numbers. What you have to do is when the polling is that way, you just have to make sure that your voters get out and go vote. And you're always worried that for some reason that's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, a lot of people went out and voted this time, I'm not surprised by the result. I am gratified by it.
You got support, particularly from young voters. That hasn't been accented much, but it seems the younger the voter was, the more likely they were to vote for you.
I think that's accurate, and we're going to get there's all sorts of analysis in the numbers, and a lot of it is still taking place. But over the next couple of weeks, the dust is going to settle, and we're going to be able to take a deep dive. Mm-hmm. But I believe that what you just said is accurate. If you take all the different age groupings, I think the younger the voter, the more likely they were to vote for me, which is great. It's not necessarily the best winning strategy because as a group, the youngest voters are the ones least likely to vote. But it is still, as I mentioned, I think it's positive for me and gratifying that young people did. They were the ones most likely to vote for me on Saturday.
You were asked in the runoff if this were your last race, and of course at that point we didn't know whether you would win or lose. Now we know. If you want to be governor again, you got to wait another 8 years before you can run again. How do you look at any potential future races at the tender age of 53?
Well, Jim, about 6.5, 7 years ago, you got me to make news on your program. I'm just now getting past that with my wife because I made news here and she wasn't prepared for it. And of course, Donna's been very, very supportive, and she's a wonderful first lady, and we've been married over 30 years. But I'm not going to make news here today. I'm just going to tell you I'm excited about the 4 years that we have to continue to serve, and my only focus is making sure that I do the very best job that I can over these 4 years.
Now, I would imagine you've been hearing from some national people. There is a presidential election next year, and I know you have some relationships with people, particularly in the U.S. Senate, people like Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Have you heard from people like him?
I have. Of course, he's not running for president, but he texted me on Saturday night. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to work with Senator Manchin because he is working on a very important bill that could impact positively our revenue sharing under Go Mesa. Right now, we're limited. When I say we, the 4 coastal states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Texas, 37.5% of those offshore royalties, and it's capped at $500 million a year. We are looking to increase the percentage and increase the cap so that we can do more coastal restoration and protection work here in Louisiana. So I had an opportunity to work with him yesterday over the phone on that matter. This is something that Congressman Cedric Richmond and Senator Bill Cassidy, they're both working on as well, and I had an opportunity to talk to both of them yesterday about it.
Denny in New Orleans. Hello, Denny. You're on Ask the Governor. Good afternoon. Okay, let's try Janice in Denham Springs. Janice, good afternoon. You are on Ask the Governor. Janice? JC, you're going to have to steer me in the right direction. Diane in Baton Rouge? Let's try Diane in Baton Rouge. You're on the air, Diane. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Diane. Go ahead.
I just wanted to congratulate the governor and also to let him know that some of the things that he has done has really made a difference. The TOPS program, you made a difference with that and making sure my grandkids were able to go to college with that. And also, I really want to say congratulations on the cyber security technology program that you started. And that also gave my granddaughter an opportunity to become a cybersecurity analyst.
Thank you, Diane. And by the way, the number of jobs in the cyber arena will only increase over the years. The threats of cybersecurity, to cybersecurity, I should say, are only going to increase. And this is going to be a high growth area. And it's a good paying area, and I encourage a lot of young people out there to really look at this. We're doing some great things at LSU. We're doing some great things at Tech. They have the first cyber engineering 4-year degree program in the country. Grambling has the first 4-year degree in cyber security in the state. And this is an opportunity for a lot of people. And I will tell you, TOPS being fully funded is important, fully funded in GO grants as well. But Diane, I also want to make sure that when the state of Louisiana provides a top scholarship to a student, that they then attend an institution that is hitting on all cylinders and delivering a great world-class education. And that's why we're investing more in our universities and our community colleges and technical colleges as well.
Okay, let's give another try for Janice in Denham Springs. Janice, good afternoon. Janice, can you hear? Okay. Tell me, JC, where we are here. Okay. I am confused as to whether we have Janice on or somebody else. Who is it? It is Ian. Ian, good afternoon. Ian, I apologize to you.
Hey, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Ian?
How's it going?
Yes, you're on
Yes,
the air.
sir.
Please be brief.
Okay. I was wondering, Governor John Bell Edwards, now that you've been reelected, how do you plan on fulfilling your promise to raise teacher average pay to the regional average?
Thank you, Ian. There are multiple ways to do it. The first thing we have to do is get back to funding the inflationary increase that is contemplated by the formula itself. The state of Louisiana did this for a number of years. It's 2.75%, half of which has to go to teacher pay. And so that's one way to increase their pay and certainly ensure that they don't go backwards and that we actually fall away from the Southern average. And then as we are able to do so based upon the revenue estimates and the revenue forecast, we will increase pay similar to what we did this year to get back at least to the Southern average.
Governor, thank you so much. Congratulations again on your victory, and I'm sure you're going to follow the LSU Tigers now that you're
I certainly
back in
will, and
office.
thank you so much, Jim. And everybody have a great Thanksgiving.